Let's go. Welcome to episode 6, everybody. And before we introduce our guest today, I'm going to give all the shameless plugs. So first and foremost, if you're not already, go to our Instagram and go through our link tree, follow everything that we got going on there. So we have TikTok, we have Instagram. We're going to be posting on YouTube stories as well too. And it's going to be all the highlight clips from basically every single episode that we do. So check those out. Also, we just launched episode 5 here, 10 minutes ago?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So we just launched that 10 minutes ago. So make sure to go check that out. And yeah, stay tuned for more content. But without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest. So today on episode 6, we have Brennan Hilleary, the new store team lead of 5-Star Nutrition Lafayette. 5-Star Nutrition. Wow, I'm tough right now. Traveling all across the country. We are fortunate to have him on because he's actually in Tennessee currently. So we're doing a little bit of a Zoom call today. But hey, welcome.
Thank you, Cole. Damn glad to be here.
I know. I'm so glad that you're here too. So one, tell us first and foremost why you're in Tennessee right now.
Well, right now, so it's a halfway point. So we're working on starting Monday. I'm going to start prepping for the store opening for Valdosta, Georgia. So Indiana to Valdosta is about 12 hours. Chattanooga's right on the way. My friend lives here. So before I go out to actually do a store opening, I got to make sure I get ready for it by ripping some sales. So
100%. So actually we were supposed to do it in person. We had talked about this earlier in the week, and I get a text yesterday and he's like, bro, I am so sorry. I have to take off because the store's opening faster than I thought. So I will just say, the position you're in, I'm super happy for you. I mean, we can talk about our relationship. So fun fact for everybody, this was actually my general manager when I first started at 5-Star Nutrition. But I want to give you the floor here, unless you have any questions right off the bat.
nah.
So I just want to get into it. I want to give Brennan some time to talk about his story. And I've heard it a few times now, and I've been super fortunate to hear it too. Fortunately, he lets me over and makes me food, and it's really nice. So, but yeah, so just talk about kind of who you are, your upbringing, and kind of even all the way up into now where you're the new store team lead.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I can keep this kind of between personally and professionally speaking. I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, but
I mean, share what you will. I don't want you to be uncomfortable or anything, but I do think there's a lot of value in your personal life and things that have translated and are the reason you've gone the way you have professionally as well.
100%. Yeah. Well, I'll start the day I was born. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I mean, basically, I'll kind of start with my childhood because I feel like that's the first reason why I am the way I am today. So I when I was 2, both my parents got divorced. So ever since I was a kid, I was kind of in a division household. I had basically when I was 4, both my parents remarried. So I had one house was my stepmom, my dad. Other house was my dad and my stepmom. And ever since I was a little kid, I've kind of struggled with mental health issues, and a lot of that has to do just with the way I was treated. To be honest, I was abused in both households. One was more on the physical side, one was more on the mental, emotional side. So kind of going back and forth between that from the time I was 4 to the time I was 11 years old. So long story short, you're a kid who's insecure, who has mental health issues, who doesn't get treated super well. There's obviously going to be some issues with that, right? So as a kid, the main thing that I experienced was really bad anxiety. That started really bad when I was about 9 years old. And, I just noticed that for other kids, it seemed when they were talking to other people, they would get energized by it. They would be excited. They'd be, enjoying it. And for me, it was almost like a chore. And there's a lot of guilt that came with that too. Because mental health is something that my parents, when I was younger, they didn't really emphasize or really believe in a sense, even though my dad and my mom both struggled with it. So I was always kind of ever since I was a kid, I felt like an outsider. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized the true reason why I felt like an outsider. But basically, long story short, When I was 11 years old, we had a custody battle. My dad and my mom were kind of fighting. So basically I was living in Kansas at the time. That's where I'm from. And Illinois, that's where my dad is. So he moved. And I was, the lesser of two evils of those two households was my dad and my stepmom's house, because even though there was a little bit of physical abuse and stuff there from my stepmom and verbal abuse, my stepmom in my head was my mom. So I wanted to be there, right? We ended up losing that custody battle when I was 11. So when I was, those next couple of years were really tough for me. When I was 13, we had another custody battle and we won. So I moved to Illinois. And yeah, I'm a single child, technically. But then when my dad remarried, basically I have a half brother and a step brother. So both of them are autistic. I kind of grew up from the time I was 10, 11, in a way, kind of their caregiver. My stepmom had a lot of problems with she was a functioning alcoholic my whole life. So she had a lot of issues. She was super mom sometimes, and sometimes she would go off the face of the earth, just kind of dependent on the day. So I was kind of always given that responsibility unspoken from the time I was a little kid.
Really quick, I just wanted to say, I think for you, now, we'll talk about going into your future, who you are as a leader now, but I think you exemplified leadership abilities even at a young age. And I think it was partially because you were forced into some of those situations as well too. But those things, the worst life experience you have ends up benefiting you so much later on. And for you, I don't think you'd be the leader you are today if it wasn't for things like that. You actually having to take ownership and accountability at a young age and take care of your siblings.
No, yeah. I think you nailed it on the head. It's easy when you're a kid you don't know what normal is, right? Normal is conditioned by your parents, what you grow up with. And it's not only until you start getting exposed to other kids and other people, that human nature kicks in of comparing yourself to everybody. And that's when you start realizing you're off, right? That's when you start realizing it's not normal, what I was going through. And that's what makes it, knowledge sometimes comes with sadness with that type of stuff. And the more I knew about my situation, the more I just started feeling more and more alone. And I think for me, when I was 13 and I moved to Illinois, things started doing better. I was never a sports kid growing up. When I grew up, I actually was a theater kid. Loved acting, loved singing, loved doing things like that. And, tried baseball when I was a kid, didn't work out. And then the first time I really felt like I was a part of something bigger than myself was when I was 15 and I joined the track team, right? For my high school. And I was about 130 pounds at the time, my height, about around 6 foot. I'm 6'2" now. So at that point I was about 6 foot tall, and never really lifted a weight to save my life before that. Never really my family's not in shape. Nobody really cares about fitness, to be honest, in my household. And I just remember feeling like I belonged somewhere, and that was good for me. And that's what led to the first, probably, the start of the entire spiral of the events leading up to what happened with 5 Star and everything else. So one day when I was 15, I was running track practice, and just a normal day. And prior to this, I wasn't able to breathe through my nose for a very long time, 6 months. I just pegged it for bad allergies, right? Other than mental health issues, I was in perfect health my whole life. And I just remember collapsing on the track field in practice one day. Started gushing blood out of my nose, a little bit out of my eyes, my throat. Could barely breathe.
Are you serious?
100%. Yeah, it was. I was 15, and literally everybody, I was freaking out, obviously. And that was the start of something that. So long story short, I got rushed to the hospital, right? Obviously, and I remember getting my first my CAT scan, right? My first CT scan ever. And I'll never forget. So the doctor walked in and he looked at me and my parents and said, "I'm so sorry." That was the first thing he said. And that's never good. And basically they found a mass in my face the size of a grapefruit. So come to find out later, so technically it wasn't cancerous, but I had to get cancer treatment in order to treat the tumor. So It was called a juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. So basically, it grew its own arteries and veins, and the source of growth was testosterone. So it had been growing in my face since I was 11 years old, and I didn't notice it because it was growing in my maxillary sinus. So but it was everywhere. So it was wrapped around my carotid artery, my right optic nerve, my orbital bone, my trigeminal nerve in my face. It was so big that on the MRI, you could see the right side of my eye being pushed out by the tumor. And what's crazy is the only symptoms I had was fatigue and a stuffy nose prior to this. So that was the start of, I got diagnosed. So when they gave me the biopsy to figure out if it was cancerous or not, I lost 2 liters of blood in the biopsy in the hospital. And they had to put a tube in my face, broke my nose, and they had to stop the bleeding. I was hemorrhaging blood. It wouldn't slow down. So I ended up losing a total of over 2 liters of blood. I had to get a blood transfusion, and that was just the start of. After that summer of 2015, or when I was 15 years old in 2012, my life was never the same. And fast forward 2 years, you're talking 35 plus hospital visits, 10 surgeries. You're talking 2 life flights to Cincinnati Children's Hospital because they couldn't operate in Illinois. You're talking being comatose for 8 days in the hospital because of drug overdoses prescribed by doctors.
So when did you start to get better?
So
dude, because this is insane. I think everybody can understand the gravity of what you actually had to go through. That. I mean, I haven't even been to 35 doctor visits in my whole entire life. Let alone in 2 years. It's insane. So yeah, when in this story did things really start to turn for the better?
Physically speaking, things started getting better when I was 17. So basically what happened is I ended up going to Pittsburgh. And basically they had so this head and neck tumor, just side note, it's 0.01% of all head and neck tumors. So they literally did not have the capability to operate in Illinois. So my first stop was Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And then Pittsburgh was the top, it's the top surgeon in the country. That he was the only person that they felt confident to work on, because this is the type of tumor, the things that this tumor was connected to, if you make a wrong move, go blind, bleed out, you could mess yourself up pretty easy. So when I was 17, my junior year of high school is when I stopped having surgery. So physically speaking, that's when things got better. However, so I never drank before, right? I never did drugs. I was the type of kid, I was just kind of I wasn't interested in all those things because my mom, or Sabrina, my stepmom, she was an alcoholic. So it deterred me from those things. But the whole time I was having these surgeries, I was being prescribed opiates. So Vicodin, Dilaudid, oxycodone, phenol, anything you could think of, because the pain was, imagine being on a scale of 1 to 10, a 9, being stabbed in the face repeatedly, over and over and over again. That's how it felt. And so basically our whole town got leveled by a tornado. The first time I ever used recreationally was my parents asked me to go get food from the house because we were staying at a neighbor's because they had a generator. And I saw my Dilaudid pills in my parents' room. And whenever you're in fight or flight mode for 4 years, and then you're forced to just go back to normal. I didn't have a high school experience. I didn't hang out with friends. I was the kid who everybody felt sorry for in town. Everybody knew me as the kid with the tumor. I didn't study. I didn't go to, they just gave me straight A's because they felt bad for me. They literally, for all I knew, I was going to die. This was such a rare thing. And emotionally, imagine all of that hitting you at once, because that's what it was when I got off of surgeries and opiates, because opiates, they don't just suppress pain. They suppress emotions. They force dopamine and serotonin in your brain, right? So, I was trying to process all this shit, and I couldn't deal with it. I became, a different person, and when I used that pill recreationally, it was I was normal again. And the moment I did that, I was hooked. So, when I was 17, that's when I started my addiction to opiates. So, physically speaking, the tumor was gone, but that was the start of my addiction. Fast forward through that, so I'm not sure anybody who's listening, I'm sure you I know that you know people who struggle with substance abuse.
There are definitely people that are on here that at least to some level, right? Like maybe it's not opiates, maybe it's something else. But what I was curious about is like, you know, like this stress, it just kept compounding for you, right? And like you couldn't actually cope with what had happened. So, because it was just so much at once, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you take a little bit of burden off as time goes, but like what was kind of the breaking point where you just like really had to make drastic change in your life as a result of this addiction?
So, you know, when two of my friends found out I stole from them, because when you're addicted to something, the same chemical in your brain that tells you need to breathe is the same chemical in your brain that ignites whenever you get addicted to a substance, physiologically speaking. Emotionally speaking, it just intensifies that craving, that desire. So for me, I was stealing from everybody. Like I was breaking into houses. I was stealing from my best friends. And the turning point for me was one day I just remember I was chilling at home and two friends at once texted me saying, "Hey, did you steal from me?" And they both came to my house and like threatened to call the cops, like did all these things. And what's crazy about that scenario is like when my parents found that out, like I got kicked out of the house, right? And 2 blocks down from me, I worked with a coworker at Hardee's at the time. His name was Judah. So his dad was a pastor at the church that I'd gone to before. And basically they kicked me out, so I asked to stay with them. And the pastor said yes, but like the prerequisite was I couldn't use when I was there. So I went there and I actually like, basically what happened is my parents set up rehab for me. And I agreed to go. And I actually went to Gateway Foundation in Springfield, Illinois, and I spent 89 days inpatient in that rehab facility. And
3 months.
For me, that was when I had time to process everything. Like literally every single, like all the shit I was suppressing, detaching from, the things that you don't understand when you're in trauma. You don't understand how much you do. Your body's just going to try to protect you, right? So you're going to detach from emotions. You're going to justify whatever you need to. Whatever your body needs to survive, it's going to do for you.
So it sounds like you were put in a situation where you were actually like forced to work on yourself. You know, some people, it doesn't go to the extreme where, you know, you got to put yourself in a facility or something like that. Like that was the gravity of which like this had affected you, which is pretty, like, it's insane, dude.
Because there's 2 alternatives. It's either, you know, during the time that I was addicted to drugs, I attempted twice. Like what you know, like I said, imagine like literally like trying to hold up, you know, 2 to 4 years worth of just like traumatic stuff. And then like what happens is like, you don't have any foundation to work with that. You're not like, whenever you're addicted to opiates, or even when I started going through surgeries, your development stops. You don't emotionally develop during that time. So here I was 17 years old. Mentally I was 15, right? And that on top of all the things, you know, my mom, like, so my parents, you know, I'm just going to be transparent and they know this, like they were shitty during that time. Like my dad and my stepmom, like, they didn't give me the help I needed to transition. And they, you know, my mom smoked weed they're the ones who introduced me to weed. You know what I mean? Like they smoked weed in front of me. Like they offered it to me. Like my mom would go out day drinking all the time when I was staying home, sick as hell, high as fuck, like watching my little brother who's autistic, you know? So like what happened after that is like, so I spent 89 days inpatient. And then when I processed everything, about day 50, I had the option to go home and I didn't because I was afraid if I went home, I was going to relapse. So basically like I spent a lot of time, really just trying to develop myself as a person. And like at this point in my life, I never thought of myself as a leader. I thought of myself as somebody just trying to survive. Right. And there's a difference between feeling obligated to do something and then having the choice to. And I became a part of what's called a Big Brother program. So basically I would like be in charge of onboarding people and like introducing them to the rehab facility, making them comfortable. And that was the first taste for me of like, why did I go through it, right? It's the first little glimpse of like, okay, I've been to help other people adjust, right? And that led to me speaking at Springfield High School. So I went to go speak at a health class in Springfield High School all day. And like, I was having people just sharing my story, you know, and like people came up to me after and were like, hey, my dad's going through that, or I'm going through it, or this person, that person. And like, that's also the first glimpse. That was like the first fire that went off in me of like, this is why, like, it's so I can help people. It's just, I didn't know exactly what that looked like. Right. And then, so that's kind of like the rehab story. And then just to showcase kind of my parents' support at this time. So my parents picked me up. So my dad visited me one time in rehab in the 89 days I was there. My mom didn't visit me at all. The first thing they did after rehab, I was completely sober, right, at this point. They took me to lunch and they drank in front of me. And their words verbatim were, hey, you're going to have to deal with this eventually. And they started downing drinks.
Damn.
So that's when I went to a halfway house, and because I would rather live off $20 a week than relapse at that point.
Right. No, 100%.
You know?
Okay, I want to spend some time because, like, okay, we'll just put it at the childhood was not fantastic by any means. From what I know about you, at least, and what you've told me, I think a big turning point for you in your life, though, was actually when you got into the military. And you don't have to spend like a bunch of time on that, but at least talk about like in a general sense how that impacted you, and then how you transitioned from the military like to the 5-star gig that you're currently in. And then I want to talk about like 5-star for you.
So November of 2014 is when I graduated, not boot camp, treatment. And then, so my doctor, the reason why, what ignited everything to do with fitness, right? Because at this point in my life, I was like, if I don't have something to funnel, I have an addictive personality. If I don't have something to funnel that addiction into, then I'm just going to relapse again, right? I need something to make me feel fulfilled and work on myself. And basically what happened is I was able to, the doctor looked me straight in the eye and said, you should never exercise extensively ever again. You're lucky to be alive. Like, don't take it easy. The tumor, so I still have the tumor. It's just this big. So the tumor is still in my face. Like, it's not completely removed. And I just remember thinking in my head, I was like, fucking watch me. Like, it's one of those things where like my mom, I've seen both my parents were obese. Both my parents had gastric bypass. I've seen the advice that doctors give, and I've seen their agenda, and I know what it is. And there's good and bad to all those things, but it didn't do shit for them. Anyway, I joined, so basically, like, my best friend, Kyle, at the time, like, whenever I went back home from the halfway house, I basically, like, started working out with him, and I went to the recruiter's office, and at first I lied my ass off. I told him I didn't have any other prior medical issues, stuff like that. And basically, I felt super guilty, so I went back to the recruiter's office, and I told them, I was like, hey, like, actually, I told him everything. And his name was Staff Sergeant Adriano. So before he said anything, he grabbed his pistol and his desk, put it on his table, and he said, I don't know why I'm about to do this for you. He was like, there's just like something about you. He was like, I want to put you through. He was like, you can't say shit. He was like, if you say that I let you come in with these pre-existing conditions, like, I will kill you.
Yep.
Like, he wasn't joking. So that's good motivation, right? But the problem was, at the time, I was 130, and the requirement to be in the safe zone to go to boot camp was 170. So that required a lot of work. So basically every single day for the next close to like 6 months, I gained about 40 pounds. And that was through just like doing shit. Just calisthenics, eating a lot, lifting random muscle groups, right? Just doing everything I could to gain muscle. And so I'd been taking medication for my depression and anxiety since I was 9 years old. Never been off it. SSRIs, right? Literally changed the pathways in your brain. And I stopped taking everything cold turkey before I went to boot camp. And it was pretty, don't ever do that.
Yeah.
Especially Marine Corps boot camp. It was surreal. And basically, long story short, like, I came out of boot camp 145, but like, so every person in my life, like, who I told said I couldn't do it. Every person, like, my parents told me I was stupid and that, like, like I have a death wish, and like everybody, like, didn't grow up from any fitness or athletic background whatsoever. And here I was, like, 2 years after my last surgery, like literally like, like graduated the hardest basic training in the US, and like that was the first time where I was like, okay, like this isn't me. Like, this isn't just like something I'm doing. It's something up there, something greater, right? Helping me. But like, that's when I knew I was meant to do more.
Right. And I think that was truly exemplified, like this, mindset that you had at the time, really like looking back at it now in your life. Yes, the military, but really 5-star though. Like, it has shaped so much of your life up to this point. I mean, half a decade you've been there now, that's kind of crazy to think about. So talk about your first experience at like a 5-star, and then just kind of like, how things transition for you from working as an employee to basically all the way up to where you're at right now.
Yeah. So basically I got home from boot camp, and I lost 30 pounds because all they do is drag you to the ground in boot camp. And I came back and I, saw 2017, March 2017, I saw shirts all over my town. They had recently opened. And I walked in, and a guy greeted me named Justin Carpenter. He was the assistant manager at the time. And I just remember walking in, and, I was a GNC shopper before, and, like, the guy was nice and cool, but, like, I never really saw results from what he told me. And basically now, like, I walked into this place and, got some good stuff, basically. When I walked in a month, I gained 20 pounds.
We love pro hormones.
Legitimately.
We love pro hormones.
I was like, damn, this place is sick. Right. And the only thing I had going for me at this point in my life, I didn't go to college. Fun fact about me. I didn't go to college, barely had a high school education. And basically I saw they were applying, and the only reason they hired me, did terrible, my interview sucked, was because I was a Marine. That's it. And I was in the Marine Corps Reserves. Right.
Got you a job, baby. There we go.
Got me a job. Right. And then, so from this point on, this is when I started really understanding what my purpose in life is, because 2 months into this job, like, so, I know that Cole and Riz and like other people have talked about 5-star nutrition on this podcast before, but long story short, it's not about selling supplements. It's about influencing people. And that's the big thing, is like, you can sell anything you want. That doesn't really matter a lot at all. The biggest thing that matters is going to be like why you're doing it to begin with. And what 5-star teaches is how to condition people to not think about the surface level bullshit and actually think about the reason why they're doing the things they're doing. Right. And that's the big thing that like 5-star taught me. And then what happened is, like, 2 months into this training, I was botching it. Like, I was doing terrible. I had terrible social anxiety, like wasn't clicking with people, like couldn't remember anything. And then I remember this lady came in, and literally, like, it's like a light bulb in my head went off. And I ended up, like, it was like a $300 sale or something like that. But more so, like, she started crying and she, like, hugged me after. And in my head, I was like, why would somebody spend $300 and then, like, cry tears of joy and then hug me afterwards? And my district manager at the time, Davey, he looked at me and he said, all right, here's your polo. And then that's when I got, and it's like overnight, I went from the worst in the store to one of the most influential. And the 5 months after that happened, I got offered a store to build, staff, and open in Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. So,
side note, really quick, I was going to say, this is actually one of the best salesmen in the whole entire country for 5-star nutrition. No, that's like no joke, though. I think statistically, there would be things that would back that up 100%, at least in the top 5%, So you're a stud. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but just everybody understand that this man, like, in terms of the actual job itself too, is a monster. But you really developed your skills as a leader more than anything. Like, your skill set on the actual job is good, but like what you're insanely good at is like how to actually build these things, right? And that journey first started for you as the general manager of your first store, correct?
Correct. And this was a very crazy situation. And like the biggest thing that like I've noticed about myself is I said yes out of desperation for a really long time. And because all I wanted to do is get away from my family. And it sounds messed up, but like at the end of the day, like, you can't grow in the same place you're sick. And like, literally, like, everybody was declining, and like, I was like, I got to get out of here. So fast forward October 2017. Okay. imagine the room that Cole's in right now. The store was that size, the entire thing. It was the smallest store in company history. It was on a military base, an Air Force base, with 10,000 people population. That's it. It was it's a B-2 restricted bomber Air Force base. So I went into the store with no management experience. I built it with my own hands and marketed for it and didn't have a staff. So basically the store ended up not having internet either. So I opened October 17th, I think, of 2017. And, I basically worked open and close for 47 days. And then because we didn't have internet, I had to process people's sales through a credit card app on my phone. And I had to manually type in every single person's credit card app. And then I was so broke at this point, I didn't have hot water in my apartment, but I had internet. So I'd bring the point of sale system home every night and close the drawer out every single night at my apartment with no internet.
I remember you telling me that story. That's so insane. Like, this dude literally gets to work at like 8 or 9 a.m. And then, so the store hours are 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. I think that's been pretty standardized since it started. And then after the store closes, can't actually close the cash register store because there's no internet at the store. Plus, processing those is like a nightmare anyways when you're in the store, and then like spend 2 hours at home every night like doing that.
And then, like, what's crazy about that is, like, at this point in my life, it was like the way I defined my success and measured it, though, was through shallow, surface level, quantitative things. And for me, I'd never been in charge of a team. Like, I'd never, like, hired anybody. I've never trained anybody. And I just remember thinking, like, so the way they gauge success of those stores is the percentage over GNC sales. Because it was a prior GNC. It's on a military installation. So
hey, fun fact. Actually, he works at a GNC, by the way.
Oh, shit.
GNC sucks.
Damn, this will be fun, bro.
This will be fun. It's funny because I've never been introduced in a GNC system. So, like, 5 stars all I know. It's so funny, like, and fun to meet GNC people, though. It's very, very different.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I have no problem against the people. I have a problem against the company. So
yes, 100%. The people, and we have people from GNC in 5 stars as well too. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to tail off there. So this is where this first store you actually started to get to like hire people and like actually became a manager, became a boss, became a leader, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest with you, like I was very like my motives in the beginning of 5 Star were selfish. It was self-fulfilling. It was not about empowering others and helping others. It's about the number, like the sales number. And the biggest thing for me is like, that's my first love was 5 Star because like when you grow up in households where they make you feel like an alien and like they make you feel like basic human needs are bad or selfish. Like the only time in my entire life that I didn't have anxiety, right? That I didn't think about the future or depression. So I didn't think about the past. The only time I could do that was when I was working with a customer. So in those 15 to 20 minutes, that customer came in that store. For me, that's what serenity was, and that's what peace was. And I got addicted to it because, like, that was the only time I felt relevant. I felt like I had an identity. And, all human beings want is to define themselves through things. So, like, eventually what happened is, like, I got to this point where, like, I couldn't grow my store because, like, I wasn't empowering my people. I was just doing everything for them. And I'll never forget, there's this guy that I hired named Trey Frisbee, and Trey was, like, heart of gold. Went through a lot of hardships in his life. The first time that I knew what it actually meant to be a leader was when I was able to develop him to the point where he took over his own store in Joplin, Missouri. And, his girlfriend moved with them. They're now, that's now his fiance. They've lived there for 3-4 years now and like thriving over there. And I just remember thinking like, damn, like it's not about what I do. It's about what I empower others to do. And for me, the urgency and the fire that I thought was big before became a completely different level. And it's because I actually saw and believed that like I could influence people. And at this point I was 20, 21 years old. And then as a result of all those things, like basically I became the DM of the Midwest. So I oversaw 5 locations when I was 21. So basically, like I oversaw like Offutt Air Force Base, Whiteman Air Force Base, Joplin, Missouri, Urbandale, Iowa, and then there's one more. I forgot what it was. Fort Riley, Kansas.
Also, side note, you're what? Are you 25 or 26 right now?
I'm about to be 25.
So 24 years old, new store team lead, district manager at 21 years old. This doesn't happen anymore, by the way. I mean, part of it was the situation of the fact that like 5-Star Nutrition was a younger company, so they were willing to take more risks like that. But and nowadays, I don't think you would have gotten that, or at least it would be probably now that you'd be that district manager, right? But holy crap, dude! Like how you actually excelled in this position, though. Well, I mean, you can talk about your successes and your failures because it took a while for you to really be like successful. But there has been a point, and we'll get into it, where like. I mean, you took over as a beast, dude. So talk about your first experiences as a district manager. Where were you again? Was that on the East Coast or was that in the Midwest?
So my first district, I had 3 total. My first district was in Missouri. I was centralized at Whiteman Air Force Base, but I oversaw 4 states. So basically, for me, the biggest thing that I had issues with, I think like the biggest thing, it took so much out of me to do what I did. Like even to talk to a customer, to like work with people, to like spend all my day putting time and energy into others because of how much I wasn't used to it. Because you got to think socially, I stopped developing for a long time. So like I was still like in the mentality of 19 when I was overseeing 5 locations, 16 people, and like it's with 5-Star like you. So the way that DM structures work is Mondays and Tuesdays are your office days. So it's all about gathering information, gathering data, analyzing what problems there are in stores, formulating a plan to fix it, and then, communicating how your plan is going to be fixing it with your teams. And then Wednesday through Saturday, you're traveling. So every single week I would rotate.
Also, so really quick, Riz and I did this on the last video, and I think this would be super helpful for viewers and also like, people that just want more insight on 5-Star Nutrition in general and like career paths. Cause obviously, I mean, you're somebody invested in hiring. So if somebody's going to listen to this and want to know more, talk about like Monday and Tuesday operationally, like Wednesday through Saturday, you're rotating like throughout, like every week you're rotating to a different store, correct? So you can talk about logistically what you do, but also talk about like on those days, like, do you have a specific thing that you do every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or is it this game plan that you created on Monday and Tuesday? So just explain kind of for the viewers.
Sure. Yeah. So basically what district manager, right? So you're a professional problem solver. That's your job. So basically like as a district manager, your job is to work on the business, not in the business. So the biggest thing that 5-Star is separate because of their sales and service, right? And the biggest thing that takes a lot of maintenance, takes a lot of time and energy. And, imagine, so Mondays, it would look like you would get the numbers from the previous week. You would do camera views, like as kind of like game tapes, right? For sports, like you would use the same thing for sales, and you would use those clips to coach your team members on how to improve their interactions and how to help customers better. But you have to do it in a way that empowers them, in a way that doesn't confuse them, in a way that makes sense, right? So you basically, Monday, you're gathering information because when you gather information, you know exactly what are the most important things you have to help them with when you go on your visits, because putting yourself in the perspective of the teams, you're there 3 days out of every 5 weeks. So when you're there, if you don't spend every second, right, if you don't put your phone off, if you don't have your other teams call the store if they need anything, if you don't spend every waking second in that store helping them, then you're setting them up for failure. So Monday was all about gathering the information, and then Tuesday was all about communicating it the right way, depending on which for me, 5 stores, that would be 10 hours of calls. It's not just about communicating it. It's how do you make them feel like they are part of the plan too, and influence them to make these changes? How do you coach them as opposed to catch them? And that basically is what set the tone for Wednesday through Friday or Wednesday through Saturday. You made the game plan with them. You schedule off time blocks to accomplish what you need to accomplish, and then you go in and you execute.
So I'll just say really quick, like personal experience from your district manager visits, and obviously it's transformed over time, but like it's intense. And you're talking about the schedule of, every minute that you're in that store. I mean, you got to be 100%. You got to give it all you got because they're only going to see you once a month, right? And for you, anybody looking to get like a district manager position like that, I mean, you think about for yourself, you're the key player doing this all the time. Like that is very, very taxing as well too, from a mental and also a physical standpoint too. You're traveling all the time, right? So I wanted to get into like, now you were the manager of this district, and obviously you're not there anymore, right? So kind of like, what were the pros, what were the cons, then what kind of transitioned you to the next district manager like position that you had?
Yeah, so I mean, as a young leader, as a young manager, like, whenever my first district, I like to call myself a glorified general manager, and the reason why is because, my ego was pretty big back then, and my ego made it so I wanted to do everything on my own. I wanted to be perceived as the person to do it all, and what that caused is, whenever I'd go to a store and I would leave, nothing happened, right? So it would temporarily spike up, but I'm not coaching or influencing. I'm not teaching my teams how to do it themselves, and I'm not teaching them to take my job. I'm just trying to like boost my numbers up and trying to, and don't get me wrong, I care deeply about my teams, but it's just my approach of how I showcased that was flawed. And, part of that was the company's fault and part of that was mine. And I think the biggest thing that shifted was what humbled me really quickly. So the store I built, Whiteman Air Force Base. So in 2019, they opened 12 AFES locations, Army Air Force Federal Exchange Services. So on-post stores in October 2017. They closed all those locations in 2019, and I had to close the store I built myself because my team, like, I basically didn't maintain like great relationships with them just because like I was so like unbalanced in my life. Like the only thing throughout this whole thing, the only thing I had was 5-star, and that's not an exaggeration. Like when I was a DM and stuff, I had a girlfriend at the time. It was a very codependent, toxic relationship. But like, I'm a 21-year-old. I don't have my direct supervisor's in Texas. So a DM, like you're an independent dude. And I just remember like what happened is like those stores, so Fort Riley, Offutt Air Force Base, and Whiteman all closed. So there's only 2 stores left in that market. So I got offered a position at Warwick, Rhode Island, to oversee the East Coast. So it was 4 stores out there, like New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. And I said yes, so fast forward, I moved 23 hours away from all my friends, all my family. And these stores were different because they came from a chain called Performance Nutrition. So they were around for 20 plus years. So trying to integrate our model, right, which conditions people to basically get focused on results, not, it's not just like a bookstore, right? Imagine a customer coming in the store and like being like, hey, like what's going on? What brings you in today? And then looking at you and saying, hey, fuck you, dude, don't talk to me. 80% of people. And I just remember going out there and that was so Rhode Island for that year, that was the hardest thing, including the tumor, including the addiction. For that year, that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And the reason why is we went out to a district full of people who didn't believe in 5-star, who didn't believe in the experience. As soon as I got there, 2 GMs stepped down. So I was acting general manager for 2 stores and was the DM for the rest of the stores. Had to fire somebody for doing illegal things in the back room, right? Like was manipulated, lied to in an area I knew nobody, no support. Went out there rogue, and by the end of all of that, this is when basically like this was God telling me like, hey, like self-preservation is important, because I literally gave so much of myself there. I had stage 2 hypertension. I literally like had pre-diabetes as a 22-year-old. I like was like using again. Started like I relapsed out there. Doing everything I possibly, like I couldn't even talk to a customer because my anxiety was so bad. Like it was literally to the point where like I wasn't capable of performing my job, and the only thing I defined myself through at this point in my life was 5-star. That title, like that job, that influence meant everything to me. So whenever I got to the point where I knew that I couldn't go on anymore, I remember calling Colt, the vice president of the company, and it was like, I can't do it. And long story short, that's what started. And this whole time too, my mom was very sick. So like part of the reason why I wanted to move home is because she was declining because of our alcoholism. And so long story short, I packed all my shit, and they had a store opening in Lafayette, Indiana, September of 2020. And before I went out and did that, I hired Riz virtually.
Hey, actually, check out the podcast that we just aired at noon with Riz. It talks about that whole entire story, and in that, you need to check it out too, because we talked about the first day that you met him, you telling him basically he's going to be the general manager of 5 Star. So, but I don't want to tell him too much of that. But so a biggest part of the move for you was, it was just a struggle out there, 100%. And obviously, you have personal things going on in your life too. But it became a very positive move for you, at least being a part of your situation. So yeah, talk about like that transition there, and at least a little bit of what you did as like the general manager of 5 Star Nutrition Lafayette.
Yeah. So basically, one thing I realized so self-preservation and selfishness are 2 different things. And in my head, I equated like pain, suffering, failure. I equated those things to growth. And that's a really fucked up, unconsciously, morally wrong thing to think about yourself as. And that came from everything I'd done in my life prior to was in extremes, like the Marine Corps, pain, suffering, Whiteman Air Force Base, pain, suffering. So like for me, like I was fighting so hard to just like stay afloat. And like what ended up happening is like, I was like, I can't pour from an empty cup. And when I moved back home, I was broken. Like September of 2020, like I just remember like I was broken, but then something in my head shifted when I met Riz. And the reason why like Riz is such an amazing individual is like Riz doesn't realize this, but he brings out the best in others just by being him. And like literally when we were opening the store together, like a fire went off in me because I was like, I want to help this guy. I want to develop him. Like I want to build his confidence. Like I want him to see how fucking great this dude is. And we hit a record-breaking grand opening day in the middle of COVID. I'm not going to say the specific numbers, but it was at the time in the company unheard of. And basically like that was like the first time I was like, I felt like I had the ability and the right to career pave and like really develop people. But the difference between New Art Island and now is I didn't want to stay in the company. I wanted to quit. Like I wanted to transition out. My emphasis was getting medicated again, like focusing on my mental health issues, like all these things that I felt would take away from my success professionally. And what ended up happening is the next year, I grew more personally and professionally than I had in the past 4. And it's hard to explain exactly like where that shift started, but the shift started whenever so the day after we opened Lafayette, we hit on cloud 9, hit a record-breaking opening day. I got a phone call. My dad, he called me. He was in tears, and he said, "Your mom died." So my mom, my stepmom, the one I call my mom, like the one that, getting a little emotional, the one that like, she abused me. She did these things, but like she at the end of the day, she was a great mom. Since I was 4 years old, the reason why I moved home, like she died the day after I opened that store. And I went home for 5 days, came back, and I just remember thinking in my head, I was like, there's 2 ways that I can approach this situation. I can completely dishonor her and disrespect her and play the victim and just like make every excuse that would be justified as to why I can't build the store up, why I can't do the things I need to do to be successful, like whatever, why I can't help people. Or I can choose to showcase the qualities that were positive that she did have through my actions and what I did. And so 5 days after, I came back and I was a different person, because that was whenever I didn't realize how much time and energy and emotion I spent worrying about my mom until she died. And when I came back, I just remember having this fire, like again, all these other times, like I thought like I had drive, but then when that happened, I was like, I know why the fuck I'm here.
Dude, it was a lot of things collided for you at once in a very positive direction. This is something I just thought about. Yeah, give me your opinion on this, but I also think, you talk very highly of Riz, and, obviously I know you talk at least somewhat highly of me. We'll just call it that. But it also was the first time in your career as a district manager where you really had people that like were about the job, were about growing, were about learning, and like wanting to become leaders themselves too. And that was your way of testing your abilities as developing leaders. So things aligned very well.
And that's a good point, because as a district manager before, I was taking over other people's districts. So Lafayette, I built from the ground up. And that was the first time I saw the direct, because as a district manager, it's really easy to not know if you're the driver of success or if your GMs are, right? You can be a shitty DM and have a great GM and still drive results. And it wasn't until I built Lafayette that I saw a direct cause and effect of what I did. And with Riz, I just remember meeting him and his character and like the type of person he was. Like it brought out like a certain passion in me, like similar to Trey, from Whiteman. And I was like, I remembered why I was doing it. Fast forward. So literally I didn't want to be multi-unit anymore. I didn't want to be back to DM. But so I had there's two other stores in Indiana at the time. There's Fort Wayne and there's Muncie. Lafayette was the newest one. So those two stores were what's called direct report store. So they didn't have a DM. They would report directly to my director, John Mailer, in Austin, Texas. So I remember this is again another evolution. Like, so I went to Fort Wayne, just to like help with like training, right? Like John just wanted me to go out there and just help with sales training. I walked in, the store was shit, completely filthy, dirty. The sales associate was watching ESPN on his laptop. This was the last ranked store in the entire company, and fire, right? So something in my head was like, there's a voice that was like, Brennan, you have the power to change this, so you need to change it. So I picked up my phone, I called John, and I was like, I need you to make me SSM. So SSM is senior store manager. So that's 2 locations. And he was like, hold on. He called the president, called me back and said, you're good to go for SSM. So that was the first time as a DM I saw my impact, because that store doubled revenue in a week and stayed there. So we went from, and that's when I realized there's 3 types of people in life. There's can't do it people, won't do it people, and don't know how to do it people. And I realized my ability is to see potential in others and get them, influence them so much that they feel morally wrong if they don't pursue that goal. If they don't pursue their growth, if they don't try to improve, like for them, it's a morally wrong thing.
Very much you instilled that mindset in me. Every time I'm being a lazy piece of shit, I just think about that. And I'm like, I literally can't, because I know Brennan's out here like flying to 20 different places and like handing out 6,000 flyers in an hour. Like, it's just what I think of. And also, hey, shout out you, because, well, I will just say, so it was basically from April until, well, you took over as the district manager probably around like June, but shout out like how much effort and work you put into it. And also a big piece of it I think of is like how you united all these stores in Indiana too. Shout out the Snapchat group that you had, Indiana Peakers, that you started. That thing's absolute legend. And like, we're all really good friends now too. So that was something, just as a side bonus of the fact of like how hard you were working for yourself to prove it to yourself, like what you did for other people too. So, I mean, you can talk about like your experience as a district manager, kind of like you traveling around in Indiana, but I was curious, just how many stores did you visit from, call it April, all the way up until like October, November, like before you took over the new store team lead position? There's a lot. How many?
9.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's crazy. All across the country too. You went out to Virginia, you went to Iowa. I mean, plenty of times in Illinois. Obviously all the stores in Indiana. I mean, it was crazy. I remember just like seeing you all over the place. And this is when you were a district manager too. Like you weren't a new store team lead. No, we knew you were transitioning out, but like it was all the work that you'd put in was finally really paying off too.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's like, so what's crazy about Indiana was I realized that there's 3 principles to selling, or what I like to call it, helping, influencing, right? So the way that I rehab stores is a lot of people go in and it's easier to assume and be biased, right? So it's easy to go into a staff full of people who aren't performing and it's easy to look at it from a surface level and be like, oh, these guys just aren't the right people. They're can'ts, right? They're can't do it people. And I just remember like thinking like my whole life I've given people the benefit of the doubt. And I just remember thinking like, what if they are, right? So I went in there and instead of trying to like fire them or like write them up or anything, I was like, there's a cause and effect, a reason. These people started this job for a reason, but they haven't been given the opportunity to really see what they can do. And of course, then I thought back to when I first started. I was like, yeah, I felt like a piece of shit because this is the type of job where if you aren't doing it the way that it's supposed to be done, it's really easy for it to be not fulfilling and just draining. And I remember I basically like looked at them and I was like, I want you to not take any sales today. I just want you to watch. And there's a lot of excuses that come with this job, right? Oh, like it's a college town. Oh, like people like, like don't have money, or like, oh, it's like not payday. People are broke, whatever. And the reason why people who have that mindset fail is because they're thinking about the outcome. They're not thinking about the shit that actually like results in somebody being helped. They're thinking about like, I just want to hit this number. And that means they're defining their success off of something that's temporary. Just like people who define their success through money. Cool, man. What happens when it runs out? It's a very shallow thing to determine your success through, right? So the way that you make a lasting impact is not setting outcomes. The way you make an impact is by focusing on why the fuck are you doing it to begin with, right? And I just remember that week that I told them the whole week not to take sales. It was a record-breaking week ever for that store without them taking a single sale. And I was like, do you think that I just remember their faces and like the holy shit, I can do this. And then I was like, cool. So I just told you how to do it. I showed you how to do it. Now do it. And then that was the first time I had a store where I left and their performance didn't fall off.
Every place that you've touched now has like instilled that same mindset. Like, I'm not even kidding, belief in themselves that they can do it. Like, you show them that it's possible. And that is literally why you're the new store team lead position, because you're opening up a new store, right? If you instill that culture from the start, I think we found, there's things that when 5-Star Nutrition Lafayette started still kind of like resonate in there because of like, that was the intention from the start, how they wanted to start it. So like, you're doing that for every single one of these new stores that you open. And I really want to hear about it because you're just such an intense individual. And like, you're talking about your district manager visits, like you're already insanely intense, right? Now you're stepping that up to a completely different level when you're opening up a new store. So I was curious, like, how have you stepped it up a notch, or like, what does it look like now? Even that schedule, I don't know anything about like opening new stores. And fun fact for all the viewers, so 5-Star Nutrition is having a huge expansion project right now. And so they actually created 2 new positions. One is the marketing specialist. So they are in charge of, and I mean, you can talk a little bit more about it, but in a general sense, like creating the partnerships and really anything to do with like the marketing side, handing out flyers, you name it. The new store team lead position, I'm going to let you talk about that, but that was another position created too, to really head these initiatives. And that was just created like in the past, 4 to 6 months, right?
Yeah. So we have 57 store locations right now. We're opening 48 more in the next 3 years. There's 2 team leads total in the company. There's Gina, she's external, which means like she has a lot of prior experience in different companies and she would be a good fit here. And then it's me. So I'm the first internal person to ever do it. So it's a brand new department. And basically what team lead is, so when you open a new store, right, there's 4 areas of business. There's team, sales and service, operations, and marketing, right? So
mentioned in the last podcast.
I'm responsible for our team and sales and service. And basically you go out to a market. So it's 6 weeks. It's a 6-week plan. All right. So basically the way this works is you get your location of where you're going to go. So this location right now is Valdosta, Georgia, right? That's the location. So I have to basically source. So you go into a market. So in person, you source, hire, staff, interview, and train every single person that's going to be a part of that store. So that's all on me. And then on top of that, you train them like per the standard of the typical training process of the stores is 4 weeks. So stack that with their storefront's not even built out yet. There's no existing stores in market. I don't know anybody out here, right? So you have to have the ability to go out in a market and immediately know exactly one. So I helped invent the hiring process for the company. So how do you find somebody who, in a baseline sales associate position, how do you find somebody who not only is going to thrive when you're there, but also what's going to set up the whole point of new store is to do everything for the DM of that market so they don't have to take away from their other stores to open a new one, right? So how do you hire not for yourself, but for somebody else in a completely new location in a place you've never been to before? And how do you do that in meets? So it's a 3 week on, 1 week off, 2 week on, 1 week off cadence. So starting this Monday, I'm going to be working 3 weeks straight, open to close, like more than open to close, probably 12 plus hours every day. The word of this position is ambiguity. Every single day, you don't know what the fuck's going to happen, right? You have to have the ability to control I call it controlled chaos, right? Like control what you can, prioritize, meet deadlines, but also give these people who have never seen the culture of 5-star, they don't see the store until it starts getting built out. Like they don't see anything. You have to create it for them with something they can't see.
Quite literally, you're building businesses. Like that's what you're doing, and that's why there's so much ambiguity, because there's no right way to open a business. There's probably better ways than others, right? But every market's different. Like there's so many different varying factors. I'm curious to hear about, you already just opened up your first store, correct? So talk about your experience through opening that store. Like you've learned a lot about what the position is now because you just did it. Because before it was a rough draft kind of, but now it's okay, this is what I do. So what in the 12 weeks or whatever it was that you were there, talk about that experience.
Yeah. So 6 weeks total. And it was basically, you went out there and, the first thing, I think for me, it's hard to describe without knowing truly what the power of the stores do when it's open, right? But one thing, just keep this in mind. Imagine if you walk into a store and you had a personal trainer come up to you, right? And imagine the amount of information that they typically charge you for to gather that, imagine all that time, all that energy that they take. Okay. So each interaction is probably 15 to 20 minutes, right? Now I want you to quantify that by 120 people, because that's how many we saw on our opening day for Hampton. Okay. For Hampton, Virginia. Imagine 120 people coming to your store, building them a plan, and giving them a positive experience while also creating an experience good enough to get them to come back in the store later on without overselling them, without underselling them. There's one word for what this position is. It's literally just, it's grit. It's you have to have a mentality. It's not if I can make this happen, it's how. You have to be versatile. You have to understand that the pressure, if this position fails, the company doesn't grow.
Correct. I wanted to mention really quick, you're talking a little bit about the value of 5-star in communities, right? And something that Riz and I talked about last podcast was especially on that opening day, right? They're not familiar with 5-star. They don't really know what it is. And so that's their first time experiencing it. And what you notice is these people are so compelled by this experience too, though, because this business was built on word of mouth, right? They're so compelled by this because before they were spending all this money on personal trainers or whatever, just there was no main source of knowledge in this realm, right? And to be able to provide that to a community, though, that's honestly so rewarding as well, too. I don't know, or I that's a big reason why you do it.
That's what it is. I mean, and imagine, here's the thing, the way you get these people, it's not through Instagram. It's not through, we didn't have marketing ads. We talked organically so the way that we got people in the stores, we had people text the number. So the way you do that, we built partnerships with 25 gyms. So we went in person to 25 gyms in a 2-week time frame. and built partnerships with them. We got 1,042 people to text in. So the demos. So demos are like when you basically you set up a table, you stand in front of it, and you talk to people as they're passing by you in the gym. Right?
And you hand them samples.
Imagine the only way you can start marketing is 2 weeks prior to the opening. So we literally hit 2 demos a day. So we worked from 6 a.m. to like 9 p.m. 2 weeks straight, and we hit probably around like 24.
Okay, so fun fact, I actually watched a lot of what you did, and this was super funny. It was something you reposted, but it was this dude, because there was a main gym that you hit, or a primary gym that you hit for a lot of the fitness base in that area, and this dude was like, bro, y'all are here again? My gosh. Like, literally, it was every single day, like, they're there. Just like, yep, we're just going to bug the hell out of all these people.
So 3 people total talked to 1,042.
Dude, that's insane.
And not only talked to all of them, like, got them to text in. So, like, just the pure, like, fact that that's even possible in my head is, like, so just so you know, that the text-ins, right, the next closest metric to that was 700 ever in the company. So the standard's 500 for a new store. We hit over 1,000, and, like, what was even crazier is the opening itself. I'm not going to say specific numbers. We beat the prior opening by 25%. We beat Lafayette's by 40.
Yeah. Damn. Will you share a statistic about yourself really quick? This isn't a monetary statistic, but how many lives do you think you've touched through 5-star?
Hundreds of thousands.
Like, okay, so call it, so like one-on-one interactions that you have. I remember, transaction-wise, you have in the tens of thousands, we don't have to go into like monetary value, but like it's a lot, right? So in-store, you've helped a lot. But yeah, if you're thinking about all these demos, like this is your impact that you've had is astronomical. It's kind of crazy to actually think about. So, and you're just such a high performer too. Like you're really impacting lives. It's not like you're just talking to people here, because obviously it's showing from a monetary business sense. You're 40% above even our store opening, which is insane.
I appreciate it. And one thing, like you're one of the people too, like I'll give you some credit real quick. Whenever you developed the way you did, and I know you've talked about this when, your first podcast, you're like, I became a fucking beast, right? When you had that shift after doing the ASM course, because Cole for a while thought he was too good for 5-star.
I did.
A little bit. And I just remember forcing you, because I was like, this motherfucker is going to sink or swim. And I was like, but he needs to understand that there's people in this world that have the same circumstances that are doing way more. And I knew, because you're competitive, I was like, once he meets them, that's it. And I just remember the best point the store had wasn't when I was a GM.
No.
It's when you were the ASM and Riz was the GM. And you're the person who gave me the confidence of like, holy shit, I just turned that no into a yes. And for me, like, that was kind of the first person as a GM. I was like, hold, because like Riz's transformation has been gradual. It's been awesome, but it's been gradual. Yours was literally like dog shit to like one of the best that I've personally interacted with.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot out of the 40, 50 people I've hired,
I appreciate that. Thank you, by the way. Also, really quick, I've heard this story before, okay? Like, and I've been a part of your journey as well, too. This is his first time ever hearing this. I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on hearing all this? Because I was talking about it in the car before we started. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let you know real quick. Like, this story's actually insane. So, and it quite is. So, like, what are your thoughts on everything?
It was, like, a lot to process at once, because, like, you've been through a lot, but, like, I'm glad that you're speaking on it now, because I feel like a lot of people, they don't talk about the things they go through, and they could be inspired by what you have done, because I feel like you could have easily played the victim card and everything that you've been through, but you just, handled adversity, and now, like, you're absolutely killing it. And that honestly motivates me too, just because I'm 18, so, like, you never know who you're going to be talking to, and, like, I'm glad that I've heard your story and, like, can take some things from it and implement it into my life as well.
I think that's going to be a lot of viewers on here. And it's just like, I wanted to give you this platform. I mean, we're going to keep talking, but I just want to say really quick, I wanted to give you this platform today because you needed some time to really, like, explain all this stuff. I think a lot of people know, but they don't understand the whole story. And so for people to be able to get the big picture, which I know they are, they're just going to understand the gravity of the impact that you've had. And there will definitely be a lot of people inspired by this conversation as a result of like just the life experience you've gone through, dude. It's freaking awesome to hear, man.
I appreciate it. And like, I know a lot of y'all, and here's the thing, like, I know myself really well, and like a lot of times I have that resting bitch face, right? Like I'm a very business oriented, get shit done person. And just to elaborate of like where that switch comes from, it's because one thing I learned a long time ago, there's two ways you take care of people: by being liked or being respected. And the thing that I credit my success and my influence most to, I'm okay with being perceived negatively in the moment, because especially if it's at the expense of somebody else's success, in the sense of like, if I know that having a hard conversation with Cole is going to make him better and it's going to push him to improve, and I know that if I wait for it to implode and wait for him to keep messing up, he's not going to succeed. I don't give a shit about his perspective about what's going on in that moment. What I care about is, am I taking care of my people? Right.
Your willingness to just, like, for lack of a better term, just get shit done is insane. Like, you're very much a problem solver, and you're analytical, and you just see what needs to happen, and you just go do it. Like, you don't care what you have to do to go make it happen, which, like, there's a lot of people out there who need to adopt that mindset a little bit more. Get your ass in the gym or something. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, like, I'm not impressed by the people who can motivate by fear. Like, good for you, man. You can yell at somebody and they'll do something for you. Like, I don't give a shit about that. Here's the thing. When I say, like, I was on it and, like, you know, having these hard conversations, what the conversation would look like is be like, hey, Cole, listen, man, like, we've talked about this a couple times. Like, you didn't clean the back room, dude. Like, and I just want to, like, explain to you, like, one, like, what's your perspective on it, right? Get your perspective. And then I'll be like, hey, listen, man, here's the thing. I know you started this job because you want to help people and you want to impact lives and you want to get better. And the biggest thing is, like, you know, we're getting busier as a store. That's always the goal. So if you don't clean the back room, you're not only like putting somebody else who's opening the next day in a negative headspace. You're not only like shooting them in the foot. What you're also doing is you're making it so there's less time and energy that you can spend helping customers. And whether you think that's consciously true or not, I want you to trust me. For the next week, let's use this cleaning list to really, like, just keep track of what we're cleaning. And then after the next week, I want to get your feedback on what changed for you. That's the difference between being like, hey, Cole, just fucking clean, and empowering you to clean, right? And the thing is, the first one is way harder to do than the second one. And
the thing is, I can tell that you've done it a lot because, well, you have a lot of examples of it as well. Like, that's the thing, folks. You're getting a lot of knowledge today because this man has been through all of it. It's quite insane. And he's seen the impact of those results. Sorry, didn't mean to take away.
No, you're good. It's like, and here's what I'll say. It's like, if you want to know why, like, what my mission in life is to leave people better off than when I found them. Literally when I was 19 years old, when I started in this company, I manifested this position. And the reason why I say that is because the only thing I ever wanted to do was make an impact. And the biggest thing I learned is either way it's a risk, right? A lot of leaders, a lot of bosses, like a lot of people, they're so fearful that they don't have any trust for their teams. Like, they're so fearful that, like, they're going to be perceived a certain way, or like they're so concerned and up their own ass that they don't understand the only way to move forward is by empowering others and making them better than you. And you have to be okay with that. Like, I can 100% say Riz 10 times better GM than I was. Like, I can honestly say I would not be able to touch being your ability to drive results at your age. Like, for me, like, even as a DM, like, I didn't touch that. And, like, the biggest thing, like, I'll say is, like, the way that you lead and influence people is you have to give your team and your people all the energy and time and train them well enough to where they can leave at any point. They have the option to. Like, they can be prepared to do whatever they want. And you have to be okay with that, but you have to treat them well enough where they don't want to.
Right. There's a lot of things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to take away.
You're good. And that's the difference, right? It's, if you're scared of losing, if you're scared of investing, if you hold yourself back, if you're going to try to jump off a cliff, right, jump from one cliff to the other side of the cliff, if you hesitate right before you jump, you're going to fall. And the biggest thing I've learned in this job is action always beats inaction, even if it's the wrong one. Because it's not about the action itself, it's about the habit of acting. It's the habit of doing something. It's the habit of moving forward and being progressive. And having anxiety my entire life, guess what? Like, that's really fucking hard for me to do. But again, it's hard to be sitting there being anxious, feeling like shit about myself. And it's also hard potentially like being uncomfortable and just going out and doing it. And once you can connect yourself with the long-term impact of what the macro shit is, right? Once you get over the surface level shit that your brain's trying to manipulate you into just like rolling over and just like keep being the same and keep just like not improving. Once you get over that, intelligence comes with sadness for a reason. If you're aware of something, you're obligated to fix it. And that's why a lot of people choose not to be aware.
So there's a lot of things I think we can talk about in the mindset side of things, because that's something like you're very good at. You've been through a lot of life experience, right? The one I wanted to talk about was one that we had talked about a couple days ago, actually, because I would say primarily you are a problem solver. Like, by nature, in your job, like everything that you do. And what you wanted to talk about, and I think is a very interesting topic, is like how to adopt the problem-solving mindset in your life versus that victim's mentality that a lot of people suffer from. And just kind of elaborate and explain exactly what you mean there by the problem-solving versus the victim mindset, and kind of, like that optimal path in that regard.
Yeah, so I'll make it very everybody's met the people that no matter, somebody in your life, you've met this person, no matter how much they perceive, no matter how much they're doing to try to do something, no matter what, like for some reason they keep falling short, right? I can't stick to this diet. I can't stick to going to the gym. Like all these things, like it's like no matter how much they consciously try, it's not paying anything, right? It's not paying off. And there's a difference between conscious beliefs and unconscious beliefs. And unconscious beliefs are formed when you're a kid. So these things that are rooted into you from your parents, from your background, the thing is like a lot of people perceive unpacking that. They don't see how much they can actually control, right? Like, so when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, the serenity prayer is to God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What we just said is, one, if you're not aware of why you do the things you do and you don't question it, if you're not a skeptic of your own behaviors and actions, there's no possible conceivable way you can do anything positive for anybody else, because you're a victim of your brain. So the first thing is, when you're a victim is, the first tendency is to be deflective to, like, it's this circumstance, it's this environment, it's this factor, it's because of this person or this thing, this is why I'm not being successful, right? And there's a book I read called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink in 2018. And that book was like, hey, when you're a leader, you own everything. Their failures, your own failure. And that was like what really started to shift my mindset, and like, you know what? Like, I'm always going to be under pressure. I've been under pressure my entire life, being anxious, and I'm sick of feeling like I'm not in control of my mindset or what I'm doing. And that's when my mind, and I'm very grateful for 5-Star, because the thing is I didn't have the supervision. I didn't have the management that I've given to people. So it wasn't like, if I didn't, in my head, success was not a choice. It was either I was successful or I relapsed and fucking died and overdosed. Like, there's no middle ground. It's literally either I'm going to die or I'm going to prevent others from doing it.
It was a very black and white scenario for you.
And what happened is you stop thinking about if you can do something, it's how. And the way that happens is by reinforcing. It's reflection. It's it's being intentional about what you do and why you do it. It's about, why the fuck did I just get angry at this situation, right? Like, why am I so like jealous of my girlfriend, like posting on Instagram? Like, why, you start to question, because there's two sides to you. There's the emotional side, and then there's you. Emotions are an indicator. They're an alerting system of something that requires your attention. But emotions are not the means. Emotions set direction. Logic and actually thinking about something is what sets the course of where you need to go. And it's really easy to let emotions dictate what you do because it's right in the moment. It's so intense. But if you detach and you can see like, hey, like, this is why I'm feeling this way. It's completely different. But the reason why people don't do that is because, again, the more aware you are, the more morally obligated you are. With great power comes great responsibility, right? The more that you are capable of doing, the more that you impact, the more you influence, the more you develop, the more you grow, the more pressure there is, and the more true you have to be to yourself. Your character has to reflect your actions. You can't fake that shit. And that's the hardest part about all of this is people think that like there's an end destination. People think that there's like this, you're going to make it after this point. Like, I want to lose 20 pounds. Cool. What the fuck happens after you get there? You didn't change anything. No systems, processes, or behaviors. You bought this detox pill that's only going to give you temporary results. And now you're just going to yo-yo and you're going to be worse than before. And it doesn't matter how big a plant gets. If you don't water it, it dies, right? If you don't take the time every single day to understand yourself and understand why you make the decisions you make, if you stop being aware, like if you get married and you stop dating your wife, right? If you lose 20 pounds and you stop giving a shit about what you eat, you have to earn that shit every day. Like it's not like buying a car, bro. Like if you're not maintenance, it actually is like buying a car because you can buy that shit. If you don't maintenance it, guess what? It's going to blow up. Like it's one of those things. Like the only way to move, the only way to get through it is by holding yourself accountable and just like knowing why the fuck you do it.
I think we just got a whole fucking educational seminar, dude. Holy shit. I just kind of like got perspective in the room and I was like, bro, I feel like I just like went and just did like a TED talk, like total lecture. Like, holy crap. What were your thoughts?
Nah, but like, I feel like I could implement a lot of what you said in my life, and I probably will now that you like put it in that perspective.
We're going to be watching through this whole entire thing afterwards. We love listening to them afterwards, and we gain so much wisdom. I wanted to talk about something that I think at least all of us kind of have a middle ground in, and that would be like the social media side of things. And I want you to talk about, I don't know if you got to see it yet or not, but you do music as well too, right?
Yeah, so, part of my whole experience with 5 Stars, when I tell you guys that, like, it took every bit of energy and time I ever had to do my job, it's not a lie, and the thing about building habits and gaining introspectiveness and improving yourself is you have, like, now you have the awareness and the ability to do other things. So for me, like, one of the passions that I lost was music. And when I was a kid, the reason why I loved it so much was I influence people through it. It's universal, right? And so basically, like now, so my vocal cords got crushed when I had surgeries. I've been singing since I was 4. When I was 15, my vocal cords got crushed. So I had to reteach myself how to sing. And I wasn't comfortable with like showcasing that till I was like 21, 22 years old. And recently I had like an idea in my head of like, if I'm going to be exposed to all these different people, places, and things, why not connect with local people in the areas and like start making videos with like musicianal videos, like songs with them and showcasing that, but like doing that through connecting with others. So that's kind of like what I'm doing right now is like, what else do I define myself by, right? Like, cause 5 Star, like it's a huge part of my life, but like, I don't give a shit about my title anymore. Like, I don't care about like the money I'm like any of that shit. Like that's a side effect of why. So that's just another layer of reaching an audience that before I didn't have the capacity to reach.
Right. I mean, you're just going after something you're passionate about, right? Like obviously you have a career path, but like music's something you're passionate about just as much as like, I would say for the both of us. I mean, you're in school right now, right? What are you studying, by the way?
Business management, but I'm trying to switch to health sciences.
Okay. But on top of that, I mean, very much invested in the content creative side of things from like, a fitness thing or a fitness sense, I should say.
Right.
But it's cool to see that you're actually like going after one of those side passions that you have. And who knows, like there's a lot that you can get from developing that side of yourself too. Like you've developed yourself a lot in terms of 5-star, but to be able to have something else that you can pour yourself into, and imagine like if, you know, you really do create what you want out of this music gig, right? And like the opportunities that you would have to like go link up with these other people while you're traveling, like those are experiences and memories you have for the rest of your life, just as much as like something like this podcast is, you know?
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's like, you know, it's just crazy to think that even though I'm doing more now than I ever have, just because of knowing why I do it and being intentional. And, you know, I'm sure you guys talk about like roles and goals and stuff like that. And like, so just being willing to unpack, like, so there's, I'm sure everybody knows what Alcoholics Anonymous is. There's a step number 4, and it's the step that 80% of people who do it relapse on. It's have a fearless moral inventory of yourself and admit to yourself, to another human being, and to God the exact nature of your wrongs. So literally people are willing to die and relapse and continue down a path and admit what they did was wrong, or admit what happened, or accept that, because ignorance is bliss, right? So the fact that like you can develop the capacity to not only achieve more than you have before, but have time and energy to do other things. There's only one word for that in my head. There's two, I guess. Like it's higher influence. It's not because it's me. It's because of the energy I'm getting from doing it from other people. Like I'm feeding off of it, you know. And I don't know how faith-based people are, but like it's, you know, it's God. Like I'm pursuing the shit I'm meant to do, and like, you know, if you deposit in the right places, like you're gonna be able to withdraw from that shit.
100%. Yeah, whatever higher power that you actually believe in. But holy crap, I don't have any more questions right now. Do you have any questions?
I do not.
Oh man, is there anything else that you want to like specifically talk about? Because I really today just wanted to give you a platform to talk about your story, because I really do think it's super impactful, and it's always just a pleasure talking to you anyways, you know? But yeah, anything else that you want to talk about in terms of like maybe a mindset, career, personal, like whatever, if there's anything else?
No, I think that like, I guess like
yeah, leave the audience off with something.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is like, it's the two biggest killers of like, if you want to make sure that you never feel good about yourself, and the thing is, people have this assumption that your passion in life shows up. It's there, right? It pops up in front of you. But what people need to understand is like, you know what happened, you know how you find your passion? You do shit. Action always beats inaction. And here's the thing. Move the fuck away from home. If you want to define yourself through everybody else that you were developed by, then stay at home. Stay around the same people your entire life, the same perspective, the same bars, the same city. But if you want to actually figure out what you're capable of, or find out just who you are, you have to have an identity outside of that stuff. And I see it over and over again. Like life is we're not designed to sit on our ass and just like eat potato chips and just fucking be literally like a cancer to society. Right? Like what you're designed to do is connect with people. And if what you're doing doesn't help others, doesn't empower others, it's not worth a shit. If it's not sustainable and replicatable, there's no point in doing it ever. And that's the biggest takeaway I've had through my entire experiences is it's about other people. If you're not serving others, you're always going to feel empty, no matter what.
A lot of wisdom in this podcast today. Brennan, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it. That's going to conclude episode 6 of the InspoCast, and we'll have a TBD date when this is actually going to air, probably on social media somewhere is what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
We'll see how long it takes to edit this one, because it's actually like a new form factor that we did. But I know you guys loved the conversation because you made it this far. So make sure to smash the like button if you didn't already. And any last wisdom from you, my friend?
No, just listen to this man right there. He knows all the wisdom. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story and all the knowledge that you have. And keep doing your thing. You're doing big things.
You are doing big things. Appreciate you for coming on. Guys, tune in for the next one. We will see you here soon.